Hi, good night. Welcome to Conversation with Rickford Burke. Of course, this is Rickford here in New York. Thank you for joining me. And listen, the program has not even started yet. And Kwame McCoy, them complaining to Facebook about the show. Oh boy. Okay. All right. So Facebook is telling me they're getting complaints about my live stream. The stream didn't even start yet. Like, what's wrong with these people? What do you think? Other people at home are stuck? Anyway. So, but this show's gonna go on. Share the link, everybody. Share the link, share the link, share the link, share the link, share the link. Somehow I am being blocked from sharing. I guess because of the complaint. Share the link, everybody. Share. You know what? We can have fun on this show tonight. So the PPP is complaining that we are let me see what it says. Got a notification that we are spreading violence and hate speech. All right, whatever. I die in America and they want to run things here. Yeah? What I don't want to tell Donald Trump that. Y'all want to tell Donald Trump y'all want control what he say. Anyway, share the link, everybody. Share the link, share the link, share the link, share the link. Share the link. Good night to everybody watching from Brooklyn here on the East Coast of the United States. Good night to you on the West Coast. It's going to be just about 7:15 on the West Coast of the United States. Good evening to you guys. Good evening to my friends in Europe, in the United States military. Good night to those in Asia. Good night to those in Africa. Sorry, good morning to those in Africa, Europe, wherever you're watching from. I know we have an audience in India as well. People watch from India. Every night, about close to 300 people in India watch this show. Good night to you guys. Keep sharing the link, everybody. Share the link. Share the link. Get into your Guyanese groups. And share this link. Usually I'm able to share, but somehow I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not able to share, but nevertheless, we will go on. And I want to tell those making complaints about the live stream. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Let me say good night to a few of you. Good night, Yvonne Rodriguez, Brian Small, watching from St. Lucia. Hey, Brian, what part of St. Lucia you are? Cott Street, Viewfort, Dennery. Where are you watching from? Good night, Shelly Morrison, watching from Florida. Keep sharing the link, everybody. Neville Cetal. Hold on, what the hell Cetal saying now? Thank you, Neville. Thank you. Said it's not hate speech, it's facts. But we haven't said anything yet. We have not said anything yet. So I'm not sure what are they scared of? Why are you frightened? Anyway, good night, everybody. Good night, Miss Giddings. Is that Diane? Diane Lewis Giddings, where are you watching from? Good night, Sean Williams, all the way from Washington. Hey, hail up. Good night, good night, good night. Good night to everybody. Who's watching from Bartica? Share the link, everybody. Let me get some Bartica folks up in here. Brampton, Ontario. Good night, Sean. Mary Fraser, good night. Brooklyn in the house. Hey. Who's watching from Brooklyn? Oh, Mitch Springer. Good night to you, sir. Neville, I hear you. Keith Cox, watching from... Did I see Montserrat? Hold on. Hey, Keith, good night. Good night. You know, Montserrat got a lot of Burks, or used to. Beverly Alexander, good night, good night. Share the link, everybody. Share the link, share the link. I'm still not able to... all of our guests are here. Not sure what's going on here. I'm going to check just now. Let me see if it's me. Live TV. So we have a number of guests on tonight. Member of Parliament Coretta McDonald. She's running for president of the Guyana Teachers Union. We have Member of Parliament Ganesh Mahipal. We have Dr. David Hines, leader of the WPA and host of Politics 101. All right, so let me see if it's me. My technical guys, can you guys come in remotely? It might be me. Or we can find a way to share it. So, all right, we find a way to share it. One of my guys will come in just now. We'll try to find, for those of you who are in groups, we're going to find a way to share. All right, so everybody keep sharing the link. All right, so time to get going. Let me introduce our panelists. Member of Parliament Coretta McDonald.
Hi, Rickford. Good night to you. Good night to your viewers. And I'm happy to be here. Always a fighter. And it's good when you have other fighters with you. And I feel very, very confident with the men who I have around me here tonight. I have no doubt about that.
Thanks. You have a female joining you shortly. We have activists and TV journalist Marcia Hines out of Barbados, who is, I think she's on another TV program right now. and she is says she has some challenges. She's gonna get on. Oh, she's here. There we go. Dr. David Hines, Politics 101, WPA. Big up yourself, Professor. And activist Marcia
Weeks.
Hello, Marcia.
Hello, I made it. I made
You
it.
made it, right.
Yes. Listen, good night, everybody. I don't know if you've started it, but I wouldn't miss this. I'm Guyanese in my heart, okay?
I know.
We know that all we gotta do now is teach you to cook up some pepper pot and roti and curry, and you're good to go.
Yes.
So what a wonderful panel here. We have Member of Parliament Coretta MacDonald. We have Ganesh Mahipal, Member of Parliament for the opposition in Guyana. We have Dr. David Hines, who's a professor of politics and African American studies at Arizona University and host of Politics 101 and leader of the WPA, which is one of the smaller opposition parties in Guyana. And of course, Marcia Weeks, well known all over the Caribbean as an activist, Christian activist, women's activist, rights activist, TV journalist. Am I correct?
You name it.
You name it, activist.
Activist. You like me, we just active. We just active. All right. So I want us all to have a really good discussion. Keep sharing the link, everybody. A really good discussion on the rights of people of African descent throughout the world and the decade of people of African descent assembly, which has just been concluded, the fourth session at the United Nations, and I have a challenge in lighting that's so hard. And the fact that the government of Guyana sent the chairman of what is called in Guyana, Marcia, the Ethnic Relations Commission. Mm-hmm. The Ethnic Relations Commission, by law and legislative intent, was supposed to promote social cohesion and monitor hate speech, basically, in Guyana. But the Ethnic Relations Commission, every time the PPP government is in power, they only monitor hate speech of the people who are in opposition. Government people can say anything, call me the N-word, hungry belly dog, this, that, and they are not sanctioned or anything. The Ethnic Relations Commission even tried to regulate the speech of Guyanese abroad, outside of their jurisdiction. Them man get white power, you know. This is not no regular buy kind of thing confined to Guyana's jurisdiction. They monitor your speech too, Marcia. They might write you a letter after this. Mm-hmm. But he, as far as I'm concerned, he condones bias and prejudicial conduct of people in the government. And they sent him, along with a minister we call Palori Joe, who's a slave catcher, who is an apologist for the People's Progressive Party government in Guyana. So that's just the background. I'll play for us all now the speech, and everybody keep sharing the link because I'm not able to share it. Everybody share the link. If you're watching me, by the way, from YouTube or Facebook, subscribe, like, follow me, whichever one. And let's pause right now and look at the speech at the United Nations by Guyana's Minister of Labor, Joseph Hamilton, at the Assembly of the Decade of People of African Descent at the United Nations earlier this week.
And peoples of African descent allows us to advance the cause of reparatory justice in the age of artificial intelligence, while at the same time share our experiences at the national level. Development of Afro-Guyanese and Guyanese as a whole in Guyana, multi-ethnic nation, is a priority for my government. We have embarked on a transformative agenda which is rapidly changing the economic and physical infrastructure of the country. This is deliberately matched with initiatives that ensure greater inclusion and participation of all citizens in the goods, services, and opportunities available to reduce poverty, geographic disparity, ethnic insecurities, and inequality. Time will only allow me to focus on two areas of social justice and how this approach has transformed the lives of Guyanese, including persons of African descent. In terms of the right of education and human resource development, the Guyana Online Academy of Learning has awarded thousands of scholarships over the last 4 years, providing free online education. This is aimed at creating a modern workforce, including by facilitating access for residents of rural and remote areas. As of this year, free education at our territory level is now offered to all Guyanese. An annual cash grant is given to every child from nursery to secondary levels. Technical vocational education and training is free at all technical institutes, thus making more people skilled and employable. Guyana is moving towards the increased use of AI, including by establishing a digital academy. In terms of the rights of housing and shelter, Guyana's massive national housing program over the last 4 years alone has distributed over 40,000 house lots benefiting 200,000 people. Notably, 43% of the owners are women. No ethnic group is excluded. In addition, several subsidies are provided for low-income households, such as mortgage relief at low interest rates. Madam Chair, as we intensify our efforts, we are well aware that artificial intelligence has the potential to significantly aid development, but the digital gap between developed and developing countries must be narrowed. Guyana will therefore continue to advocate for digital justice. Let us continue to advance the fight for reparatory justice, and AI must be part of that conversation. I thank you.
Lord Jesus, I don't even know where to begin. We're gonna play the response of the decade in Guyana, but just for fact-checking purposes, the first thing that offends me is that Joseph Hamilton, a black man, went up there and tried to change the focus of the forum. The forum was to focus on the development of people of African descent. He talking about Guyana's development and no section of the population is exempt. And I mean, it offends me because it is a strategy of the PPP. They don't want ever to talk about what's the plight of Afro-Guyanese in Guyana because they'll be found wanting. So what they prefer to talk about is fairness, according to them, in the population and how equitable their policies are. We don't give a damn about that. We care about what this forum is focused on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that this man ain't got no shame. The Guyana Online learning that he's talking about, it was just declared to be fraudulent. The university that they told the students that they were earning this degree from came out and said, we have no affiliation with these people. We don't know where their money going. We don't know who they're paying. We are not affiliated with this thing. And he's going to mention it here. But it is not for the benefit of Afro-Guyanese. So I'm not sure why he's mentioning it there. And notice in all the figures he gives, at no time could he say 200,000 Afro-Guyanese are benefiting from this, as opposed to when before we took office, 100. At no time did he give specific statistics with regard to the people of African descent in Guyana. But I'm just throwing out some teasers there. Before I come to you guys, let me get the response from Ipadaji. I think this is it. Let's see. So let's go. This might be Ipadaji's response, I think. Are you guys hearing it? I'm not hearing it.
Nope, nope.
All right, so let's try it again.
On behalf of the International Decade for the People
Okay,
of
let's
African
start
Descent.
over.
Of African Descent Assembly, Guyana. You have the floor.
Distinguished members of the forum, notwithstanding the hypocritical presentation to this forum by Guyana's Minister of Labor, who has publicly blamed the people of African descent for their present state and whose government has not taken any equitable action to address the state of the people of African descent, I take this opportunity to address this forum with the true narrative on the state of the people of African descent in Guyana as I speak on behalf of the International Decade for the People of African Descent. The African Guyanese community, descendants of the enslaved, has been systematically marginalized and remains disproportionately at the bottom of the economic and social order. Education, land rights, entrepreneurship, and political representation all reflect this exclusion. Our school curricula continues to omit the history and contributions of the Guyanese of African descent. Ancestral lands acquired through the historic village movement are being seized without compensation through institutional and legal manipulations. And in spite of legal provisions, a functioning Human Rights Commission has yet to be constituted 20 years on. The government of Guyana, whilst vocally supporting reparations abroad, as was done here today, has not implemented a single dedicated national policy to repair the internal legacies of enslavement. Instead, African Guyanese are blamed for their circumstances, demeaned by public officials as lazy or unworthy. The current governance structure entrenches this exclusion, even within the Ethnic Relations Commission, which is in attendance here today, represented by someone other than someone of African descent, notwithstanding the African community asking otherwise. The time for polite silence is over. We ask this forum to stand with us for justice, equality, and repair. Thank you.
So that was Vincent.
I thank you for
Listen to
your
the applause.
remarks.
Listen to the applause from the Black people in the room who were there to represent the interests of Afro-Guyanese people of African descent around the world. I'll come back later and show the photograph of the chairman of the Ethnic Relations Commission. But Dr. Hines, were you offended by what Joe Hamilton did at the forum? We're not hearing you. You're muted.
Yeah, more than offended. I'm ashamed. I'm really ashamed. I mean, I'm a proud Guyanese. Whatever you say about us in Guyana, we get sense and we're bright people, all right? And as an educator, as someone who is in the business of beating back ignorance, Whenever I'm in the presence of that kind of ignorance on the world stage, I'm ashamed. I tolerate it at some level in Guyana because, we have to deal with it at the level of politics. But I'm was totally ashamed. We're the only country with about 4 delegations there, 3 from the government and 1 authentic delegation. And here we have a minister of government not speaking to the objectives of the meeting. The objective of the meeting is for justice, recognition, and development of African people within the context or using the frame of reparatory justice. The gentleman spoke not to justice for African people. He spoke not of recognition for African people. He spoke not of development for African people. And he spoke not of reparatory justice. And so, therefore, he was speaking to some fictional forum in his head. But he was there purportedly speaking on behalf of my country and on behalf of me. And I am disgusted by it, very disgusted by it. And I am so glad, so proud of Vincent Alexander for standing up and defending our country and defending the collective dignity of not just Guyana, but the Caribbean. When you talk about the African contribution to the new world and to the world at large, the Caribbean stands tallest than any other region in the world. And what that minister and others did there is really, really a disservice to everything that we have come to represent as a Guyanese people and as a Caribbean people. From Edward Blyden and Marcus Garvey, down to Franz Fanon and down to Rodney, from A.U.C. Quayana to what's his name? I'm trying to get to one of the governmental leaders, Forbes Burnham and Michael Manley, all who stood on the world stage and witnessed for the dignity of the African in particular, but for the Caribbean. For a man to go and to stand in the shadows of those men and women and talk such trash, we all must stand up and say, you have not spoken for us, not in our name. Vincent did it, and I want to do so tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Carter, what's your response to Joe Hamilton misrepresenting the truth, first of all, shamelessly referencing Goal, the Guyana Online University, and also presenting a paper at the forum that is completely divergent from the purpose of the United Nations Forum?
Rickford, let me say from the onset, I was not surprised. As a matter of fact, when you look at Joseph Hamilton, he himself was not convinced about what he was saying. But of course, he was given 2 or 3 sheets of paper with some typing on it, and he had to go there and peddle what his masters give to him. Secondly, Joe doesn't even know who he is. So Joe would go there and stand up and read anything because he doesn't know who he is. But the fact that a minister would go there on an international scene where you're talking about Africans and to spill out that kind of trash about housing project when the housing project does not even concern Afro-Guyanese or Africans. You're talking about goal. Well, I like I said earlier, I am not surprised because Joe doesn't understand where he is. He doesn't know who he is at this time, and anything Joe would do to collect his bowl or cup of soup. So I wasn't alarmed by what he did. But being a Guyanese, I'm embarrassed that every time the PPP government go out there on the international stage, we are embarrassed as Guyanese. And I want to say tonight, Joe did not speak for me. He had no consultation whatsoever with us. So he did not speak for me at that forum. And lastly, I want to say that, like Vincent said, the time for being silent and the time for using a whole lot of diplomacy is done with. We must call these people out every time. And I don't care when they will come out there to say, you're a racist, you're a this, you're a that. I don't care. You know what? Let me reflect on this one. Prime Minister Modi visited Guyana. And when he visited Guyana, there was not even a slot there for the opposition leader to meet with him for 5 minutes. You know? Outside of that, President Modi returned to India, and you know what he said? And a part of his speech
Guyana
said
is a mini India.
he went there to this country in South America, and it's a mini India because the Indians are successful in business and education and
Dominate. He said they
and
dominate. They dominate.
everything. And you know what? Nobody from the PPP, not even Joseph Hamilton, maybe that one slipped by or he didn't even hear it. Not even one of them decided to correct what he said there. Mind you,
But corrected, there was nothing to correct. He spoke the truth.
when they took him to the places of interest, not one of them highlighted the coffee statue. That was not part and parcel of his visit. Nobody took him anywhere to meet with Afro-Guyanese. So to him, it seems as if Guyana was dominated by. And these are the issues that we have to speak out against. Because you know what? Our foreparents, the roads that are now modern that we walk on in Guyana, our foreparents laid the foundation. Our foreparents paved the way for every other, apart from the Amerindians, for every other race that is existing in Guyana. And so when we look at the way Afro-Guyanese are being treated, or the way, mind you, the Hungry Belly thing is a theme song for them. And then they come out there to tell you, we're going to poison them out. I mean, Marcia Weeks has had her taste of it because we share programs together. And this is the kind of I pass, let me put it that way. But it's all well and good. But Joseph Hamilton, that shameless man, would go out there to speak on my behalf. And then to add more insult to injury, the chairman of ERC, he believes that he can speak for me. He can't speak for me. He doesn't understand my culture, so he can't speak for me. And you know, Rickford, I think, again, we have to double up our efforts and start putting lashes on these people and calling them out at every international forum where we have the opportunity, because they're a disgrace and they can't represent us.
Thanks. Ganesh, let me get a different perspective from you. As a member of parliament, as someone who represents a region that is predominantly East Indian, but with large pockets of Afro-Guyanese, someone who's conscious about the representation you must provide for your constituents. How do you feel about the government, one, trying to tell the United Nations, we're not recognizing your decade focusing on the development of people of African descent. We're not even recognizing the organization that represents the decade in Guyana. We want to talk about our own thing because we don't believe that you must empower one group over another. They're not looking at the fact that because of slavery, the worst human catastrophe and atrocity known to man, people of African descent and Afro-Guyanese have been placed at a disadvantage in every aspect of human existence in the world. And they can't recognize that that is why the decade was created, to focus on the empowerment of people of African descent. How do you feel as a member of parliament that your government is delegitimizing or attempting to delegitimize the United Nations focus on the empowerment of people of African descent. And the offense of sending a man like Doc, who, as far as I'm concerned, demonstrate tendencies of ethnic supremacy by focusing only on people of African descent who he deemed to offend the ruling class of the ethnocracy, the PPP ethnocracy in Guyana. Long question, but I know you can handle it.
Thank you, Rickford. Good night to you. Good night to your viewers. Good night to my fellow colleague Coretta and my dear friends Dr. Hines and Marcia Weeks. I want to first of all develop on this point that Coretta spoke to, and that is when Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, went back to his country and said that Guyana is like a mini India. And I do not blame Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, for saying that because he said what he saw and he saw what was exposed to him. So the issue is the Guyana government, instead of representing Guyana as what it really is, and that is a multicultural, multi ethnic, and multi religious country, represented Guyana to Narendra Modi as a mini India. And that is why Narendra could have said that. I did not see when Narendra Modi came, I am subject to correction, that there were Amerindian dancing their Matapi song, that famous song. I did not see African drumming in a fusion with Indian tassa. I did not see the Chinese demonstrating anything, nor did I see any other ethnic group showcasing Guyana for what it really is. And that is a country that is not that is multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious. So the blame has to be laid squarely at the feet of the People's Progressive Party because they demonstrated Guyana as a mini India to Narendra Modi. And that is why we must understand that the government of the day seems to want to put our country as that. And that is something that we have to speak very much true about in terms of when we are addressing this Narendra Modi situation. Secondly, when you speak about what Joe Hamilton did at the United Nations, this is a forum that is to address specifically Africans, whether it is Africans in the West or Africans in the East, Africans in the North, or Africans in the South. It is to address issues surrounding Africans. For Joe Hamilton to arrive there and speak from a broad perspective without presenting data and presenting statistics to substantiate that there has been movement in the direction of development of Afro-Guyanese, that I think if he had done that, it would have given some substance to his presentation. But he did not do that. Instead, he went and he spoke about everybody. And the focus of the forum was really to deal with African empowerment, African development, and African upliftment. I was hoping to hear, since they believe that African Guyanese are benefiting equally as all other ethnic groups, I was hoping to hear the percentage of Africans in comparison with percentage of other races. And when you speak of goal, I would have loved to hear what is the percentage of Africans that were awarded gold scholarships. What are the percentage of Africans that were? He spoke about economic upliftment and physical infrastructure improvement. I would have loved to hear in terms of economic empowerment how many Africans really received grants from the Small Business Bureau. How many Africans were given that $250,000 that was given out at Wakenham for all these small shop owners? I spoke about it in my budget presentation that they went and they gave to specific communities, and the predominantly Afro-Guyanese community in Wakenham there, Mariah Joanna, nobody there got it, no shop owner there got it. So if you had presented as the minister some data to back up what is it that you're saying, then that would have given your argument some degree of credit. But there is no data to present because, and even if there is, what you will present will still show the disparity. It will still show that you are just focusing on a small grouping as opposed to an approach where Africans in the absolute majority or greater majority or all are subject to an equal treatment in terms of your policies and your development. And that is where I think he erred and failed miserably. I was, whilst the program was going on, going through the budget to find the amount of monies that were given to Ipadaji, for example, and to say that I think Ipadaji began its work thoroughly for the sake of establishing an existing structure that can function effectively and move into various communities to empower at their levels the African Guyanese that are not economically empowered in the majority, to lift them out of the nightmare that they happen to find themselves in. And it is unfair for this government to compare the other races to that of Afro-Guyanese because records are there to show that our African brothers and sisters were indeed subject to harsher treatment and more. They were suffering more, so to speak, because they were never exposed to the economic empowerment and to the transformative agenda that this government speaks to. They were never exposed properly to those kind of things. And for me, Rickford, I was a bit disappointed that they used Joseph Hamilton to achieve an objective, which is to show that you have a black minister of government coming to speak there on behalf of the government, but he did not speak on behalf of the Africans because what he presented was nothing that really focused on the intended, of nothing that was focused on the actual forum, which
Objectives
was
of
to
the forum. Yeah.
deal specifically with Africans.
Thanks, Ganesh. Very, very enlightening contribution. And you highlighted something which I think everybody spoke to in a different way, which is the government could not. I think they can't. And that's why they punted like that. They cannot point to specific accomplishments of African Guyanese under this racist PPP regime. They can't. For instance, he can tell you out of 200,000 house lots they purportedly give out, whether it was 30,000 or 10,000 or whatever Afro Guyanese benefit from. Because if he had given that number, it would have been embarrassing for the government, which is, I think, is the point Coretta was making, because it would show about 5% or 6% of African Guyanese got house lots under what they call this massive 200,000 development allocation program. And then the house lots that they're giving out, you can't do anything with it. It has no infrastructure. They just give you a piece of paper and say, hey, you that number 7040 back down somewhere. There's no infrastructure, there's no road, there's no bridge, there's no water, there's no sewer. So what are you going to do with these house lots? And I wish this forum was a forum where you could question the presenters, where everybody in the assembly can question, and maybe the United Nations needs to move towards that kind of formula where you could question. Because obviously everybody in there knew that Joe Hamilton was lying based on the applause, right? The applause, which is an affirmation of, of of Vincent Alexander's presentation. But Marcia, as a non-Guyanese, I'm sure that you're shocked to know that they sent a slave catcher. That man is a slave catcher, right? He's worse than a house slave. They sent him there to go and catch slaves, black people, and bring them back into the slave master's home, or sent him to the United Nations to lie, to perform the duties of the pigs in Animal Farm, to go out there and paint a glorious picture of the country. And in so doing, he exposed himself because everybody at that forum probably said, look at this jackass, look at this donkey. He's not even speaking to the accomplishments of African people in his country. What say you, Marcia?
You know, as I listened to him, Rickford, I was wondering which Guyana is he talking about? Because I live here in Barbados, and we have a lot of Guyanese in Barbados. In fact, my administrator is a Guyanese. I love to work with Guyanese. They're hardworking, and their stories and their experiences is nothing, you know, nothing like what he's speaking of, because actually it is because of the marginalization and victimization why some of them have left Guyana. So,
Exactly.
as Afro Guyanese, so I was listening to him, on which Guyana is he speaking of, and as you said, by the applause, I was surprised at the applause of the other speaker. Then you know that the people in the room, they weren't buying it at all. And as I listen to this, I can't help but think about CARICOM, and think about how Guyanese, the situation in Guyana, how it is being treated, how how Afro Guyanese are being treated, and how we are not, as a region. It's almost like we've turned a blind eye to it. Our leaders, I mean, our leaders. When you take our leader, they're traveling all over the world, and they're asking for reparations, and speaking about what we endured in slavery. But what about Guyana? Guyana, the Afro Guyanese, as far as I'm concerned, in the Caribbean, they're being treated. It's almost we're treating them like we treat Haiti, the blacks in Haiti. That's how it seems to me. When you think about the recent issues of police brutality there, I was only looking at the on social media today, actually, and I saw the comments from some of those who were posting, and I could tell by just by the when I see the comment, I could check the last name, and I know exactly where it's coming from. It's so clear. It is so clear, and I don't understand, why is it that our Caribbean leaders, those in CARICOM, why can't they see what is happening to Guyana, the Afro Guyanese? What about it? Why is it that they can't see that there is some issues there in terms of investment opportunities. You talk to Guyanese here, and they speak to you about that, the way contracts are awarded. Why can't they see that? Why can't they make a decision that they're going to look into this properly? I don't understand. While we are going about, and we are talking about reparations, we are asking people to remember, what happened in slavery. And I can't help but think of this quote here from a song, well, a verse from a song by Bob Marley, which says, "Until the philosophy which hold one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, everywhere is war, me say war." And that is what is happening to me as I look on, is happening in Guyana. And it hurts my heart, because it's a place that is so rich. It is so beautiful. The people are hardworking. And it's a shame that our leaders are just sitting by, and you don't really hear anything said about this. And I'm not sure exactly why. Are we going to allow Guyana to destroy itself? I don't understand why. Well, yet we're saying, I would hear them say, oh, Guyana is going to be the breadbasket of the Caribbean. It's almost like, they're waiting to stick out a hand, Mr. Hines, to Guyana, but nobody is coming to the aid of Guyana. Nobody's taking the police brutality seriously. Nobody's taking the marginalization seriously. Nobody's taking the victimization seriously. And I'm making an appeal to everybody who's, if you're watching this and you're not from Guyana, when you see these issues, post them. I posted this forum, the UN, the speeches. I post them. Post them. Talk about them in your countries. Stand up, and as I said on the other show, it's not just the black lives in America that matters. It's the black lives in Guyana.
Yep.
Very, very important. I'm so happy I see Mr. Ganesh Mai Paul here, and he is empathizing and understanding what is happening with the Afro-Guyanese. And so that is what needs to happen. And you could just tell, just by social media, it's like Rickford, I mean, it feels like a pot that the lid is just boiling, and it's gonna, because I mean, how long are people gonna take people calling them hungry belly, and how long you could
Not only hungry belly, but hungry belly dogs.
hungry belly dogs? You can't be telling, you could never be calling no Jamaican hungry belly dogs. I'm telling you, how long are people gonna take that?
But the funny thing about it, you have, for instance, and I want everybody to come. I'm gonna come around the panel to comment on what this. You have the ethnic relations chairman there. I don't know what the hell he was doing there. Honestly, he must have felt out of place. But you see, the PPP government is so audacious, right? They want to tell the world, but hey, listen, you can't listen to the black people alone. You gotta listen to we. Right? And their presentation on their state of empowerment or development or lack thereof in Guyana does not represent our views. So we got to send the own delegation. That's the first insult. The second thing is they could not speak. The government always talk about, oh yeah, we for reparations, and it sounds good. It's a good soundbite for the president and his tenure to go out there and talk about, yeah, we want reparations to black people. But even justice, atonement for things in Guyana that they have done to black people, they denied. They killed Colonel Bacchus. The police killed him. The investigation found that it was murder. The family sued the government. They were awarded $24 million, measly money for life, and the government refused to pay. The Attorney General appealed that decision. Too much money for black people get, man. Right? No. We can't pay $24 million for the murder of a young black boy by a police officer, an agent of the state. It was then when we started to criticize it, then the president come like he's a savior. Well, today I've instructed the Attorney General not to appeal. Why is he appealing in the first place? Why do they have to go to court to get compensation in the first place? But one of the things that they have been successful in doing is branding those of us who fight for equality and justice as racist. You can't talk about the ethnic supremacy in the PPP because that's racism. Oh, how dare you speak about our racism? No, you're racist. We are superior. That's how I see it. We are supremacists. You gotta bow and accept what we say, right? And if you don't, we send the police after you, the tax agency after you. We smear you on social media, and if you're lucky like me, the vice president curses you out with all sorts of lawless names every Thursday. He like a market woman selling fish. Every Thursday, a gutter rat who get on tight pants, underwear, slack. I mean, this is the thing. This is the lawlessness that they engage in on behalf of the people of Guyana. But I want to speak specifically to this issue where they try to intimidate you and suppress your views or your efforts to expose their discrimination and racism by labeling you racist. And I'll go around the panel. Dr. Hines, what's your response to the collective assault on Vincent Alexander by labeling him racist? Even the Attorney General, Guyana's Attorney General, the notorious alleged thief man who thieved the government assets and was charged. He is attacking Vincent Alexander for telling the truth at the forum. What's your response to that? And then his followers, all the PP followers, are attacking yourself, me, all the other Black activists as racist for exposing racism.
Well, Rickford, you know, if they define racism in a particular way, we have to define racism from our standpoint. And they have to deal with the fact that they're
But could you define racism for our audience, for education?
Racism is grounded in the notion that one's race, one's ethnic group is superior biologically, genetically, culturally to other ethnic groups. All right? And racism is an ideology that underpins enslavement, slavery. Slavery, which started out as an economic project, as we have some technological development, there's a demand for labor. We are not going to use Europeans as free labor. We are not going to use Native Indians as free labor. So there's some dark-skinned people out in Africa, and we're going to get them and bring them to work on the plantation. But then you have to answer the moral question. The moral question was why these dark-skinned people as opposed to the lighter-skinned people. And so therefore, you justified by saying these dark-skinned people, this color means inferiority. This color is inferior to other colors. And so therefore you develop the ideology of racism, which was first explained by going into the Bible and pulling out the part with the two sons who saw their father naked. Well, one of them saw the father naked, the father cursed him. And so the Christians of that time said that the descendants of the cursed son are these dark-skinned people. All right? And the descendants of the son that was not cursed are the fair-skinned people. Then you move from religion to science. Thomas Jefferson says in a small book, Notes on the State of Virginia in 1781, he says, Native Indians are brown people in white skin. He said, dark-skinned people, those black people, I am not sure, but they seem to me to be inferior to white people and native people. But I am going to leave it to science to prove me wrong. And the science of eugenics, which was the science of 19th century America, came up with the notion that dark skin was akin to those who were closer to the animal kingdom. Joseph Knott, who was a collector of skulls, collected white people's skulls, black people's skulls, Native Indian skulls, and he measured it. And he said, African skulls are longer. And so that means that they are closer to the animal kingdom. That was the science of the 19th century. And it is that science and that religion
that they're using
that underpins the ideology that we today call racism. And then we move from that to the biologization of racism, that the people with this skin, they are poor, not because they live in impoverished conditions. They are poor because they are born with genetic defects. And at some point, they will be exterminated. they will be weeded out of the human kingdom. So there was no plan for the African to exist beyond slavery. They said in America that African people could not exist in a state of freedom, and they banished some of them to an island of Haiti, and they sent some back to Liberia. Those who went to the island of Haiti, they could not exist there, so they had to come back to America. Well, we know what happened with those who they sent to Liberia.
Liberia.
Making here is that the ideology of racism is deeply rooted in the worldview of the 18th and 19th century. And so people, it's something that is transferable. You don't have to be white to use the ideology of racism. You can be brown, you can be black, because black people, and here is where we come to the Joseph Hamiltons of the world, that although
Before you get to that, Doc, explain to us how the ideology of racism impacts power and is used to influence policy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, racism moves, therefore, from biology and religion. It moves now into government, institutions. The institutions of the society, whether they're the legal institutions, the educational institutions, the governmental institutions, they now adopt this ideology and put it to work in the way they govern, in the way they distributed resources. Let me give you a fact. Josiah North, who wrote Types of Mankind, which is the initial book on racist ideology. The Department of Treasury in the United States bought the most copy of that book. All right? So it is the margin of this backward ideology with power that then takes racism from a purely religious and biological pronouncement to now institutional. That the law then says that you are this color, you can't have a family by law. You can't marry people who are white by law. You can't own property by law. All right? So it goes into the institutions of the society. Rickford, if you may allow me 1 minute more, I want to say
Sure.
the ancestors and God send Sister Marcia tonight because she has hit on something that is hidden under the calabash and that we as Guyanese and Caribbean people don't want to talk about. In our post-colonial experience, our governments have generally avoided the issue of race. From Guyana to Jamaica to Bahamas to St. Lucia, our governments have avoided race. And you can say for good reasons, because they wanted to bring people together, to build these multi-ethnic nations out of one come many, one people, one nation, one destiny. All right? And in the process of trying to build these cohesive units, they ignored race. And that has come back to haunt us. That is why the United Nations, in proclaiming the decade, said, look, governments have passed laws creating equality. Governments they've done things to bring equality to black people and brown people. But institutional racism, which arose out of slavery and colonialism, they have not tackled. And we are asking them in this decade to tackle it at the level of the state. In effect, what they're saying to the states of the Caribbean, for example, you've got to commit some suicide there. You've got to go against the ideology which has driven you away from dealing with race. I mean, in Guyana, if you want to win an election, you can't say anything about African. I mean, they're terrorizing poor Aubrey Norton. You've got to run from people like David Hines. You can't win an election. Where does that leave Norton? He now has to ignore race. And And because if he embraces race, he's then called a racist, and the Indians are not going to vote for him. That is the dilemma for African people, is that we live in these nation states that have ignored race. And the United Nations say you all cannot continue to do it. And in the first decade, they did nothing, little or nothing. God bless David Granger. At least he put some money and he came off the stage. He came to me and Vincent Alexander. I still have that picture. And he said to us, it's in the two of you all, and you all gonna make it happen. All right? Because he was recognizing that as president, he can't make it happen. But what he can do is facilitate it. And that is how Vincent Alexander became the chairman. I am giving you that little personal anecdote. So we have to give Granger some credit. But our governments, as Marcia has said, do not deal with race.
Yep.
They run away from it. And this is what the United Nations is saying to them. We give you all 1 decade to deal with it. You all have not dealt with it. We give you all a second decade to deal with it. And we will see what happens. We may have to have a third decade. But to me, as I said, God sent this young lady here tonight because she has hit at the core issue that she raised the question, I think, rhetorically. Then she asked, I don't know why. I think she knows why. All right? And it is because it is difficult to do nation building while at the same time to deal with the repairing the damage that has been done by the pre-nation, meaning the colonial nation, the damage that was done by the pre-nation. The nation has inherited it, but the nation has found ways to skirt around it. And the United Nations is saying you cannot do it anymore.
Coretta, you're a member of parliament, you're a policymaker. Albeit you might be in the opposition, but you're a policymaker nevertheless. You're a lawmaker. And we face a situation in Guyana. I like to be provocative and I'm bold. So I'm going to ask you this question. In light of what Dr. Hines has said, Marcy said, we are ignoring this issue. CARICOM continues to ignore the issues with regard to Guyana race. CARICOM completely ignores the fact that there was a genocide in Guyana. They don't want to deal with it.
No.
As a matter of fact, when you raise it at that level, they say, well, you know, genocide has some very specific definition on the international law, and so many murders are qualified only as a genocide. You kill out people, and it had a specific racial objective, it's a genocide, as far as I'm concerned. There was a genocide. And the government continues to use propaganda to counter facts, counter exposure of their racism. As a matter of fact, they continue to marginalize the society more as a tactic to counter what we say. And in doing so, racism has become more entrenched in Guyana. And now they have a new tactic where they're employing Blacks, particularly young people who don't have the history, who hasn't seized the facts of history, to present those facts and say, this is our history. They're using them to propagate the narrative that we are the ones who are exposing racism, we're the racist ones, etc. But in doing so, the society becomes more marginalized, more polarized, more fractured. Do you think Guyana, with a PPP government, can survive as a unit, as a country, as a multi-ethnic country, as a multi-cultural country? Or is it time for us to talk about whether we want to survive as a unit, as a country, or we should separate? Let the PPP go. This is just a question I'm asking. Let the PPP go and take the supporters and live on an island somewhere. Or do we want to structurally address this issue of racism that becomes more and more endemic, more and more pronounced wherever the PPP is in power. As far as I'm concerned, they don't believe in a multi-ethnic society. They believe that their people who look like them and believe in their political philosophy and believe in their party must dominate everybody else, even Amerindians and East Indians who don't support them. And I'm wondering, are we at a point now where they don't even recognize or respect the effort of the international community to focus on repairing the damage, historical wrongs that were done to the people of African descent? They don't recognize it. They're like, we don't believe in that shit. We don't believe in that. We believe in equality. So if you're talking about Afro-Ghanese empowerment, we want to have East Indian empowerment. They don't believe that the disparities historically have done so much damage to people of African descent that we have to, the state, as Dr. Hines said, has to address it, has to address it with strategies for social transformation, for economic empowerment, for advancement of people of African descent. And in doing so, that will be affirmative, as we say in this country, affirmative action. It's going to somehow close that gap of disparity. So my question to you is, how do we address it in Guyana, and how do we address the fact that our society is so fractured, where we believe the PPP deliberately wants to cause some sort of separation, geographic separation, because we already got the racial separation under them, right? They want to do that. Are we going to face it? Why do we avoid discussing it? And how do we deal with it as a country? Are we going to keep ignoring it and campaign and say, one people, one nation, one? No, we're not. We're not one people, one nation, one destiny. That's not what the PPP projects. They are course not tomorrow, but you could answer correctly.
Well, Rick Ford, let me start off by saying this. In order for us to correct any issue, we must first get to the root of it. And we must be honest about getting there. The PPP, they don't want to go there simply because as long as they use the race card, then that will get them where they want to be. As long as they continue to demonize a certain grouping of people, it will get their people to cling to them. I remember a while ago, one of my colleagues spoke about being mentally lazy, and she got lots of lashes for it, Amanda. But this is what they have been doing all the years. They have not been educating their people, and so they go out there and they throw that race thing. So what they do, they go out there and they continue to demonize LFS Barnum. They continue to talk about, Barnum banned this, Barnum banned that, Barnum banned the other, and these are the items that Indo-Guyanese have been using, and Barnum in like y'all. Barnum instituted national service, and they used to use that phase or that organization or that arm to pull Indo-Guyanese girls out and rape them. And so they shoot that kind of thing there. So they are not honest about living as one people, one nation, one destiny. They're not honest about moving Guyana forward and ensuring that every ethnic group is placed at a level table. They don't want that. They believe in suppressing other races, especially Afro-Guyanese races. They believe in squeezing you, putting you in a corner and squeezing you there so that they will always appear as the godfather when they come and offer you some crumbs. That's what they believe in. Secondly, we must note that the era of the Chedi Jagan, when he established then the Apanjat system, that is still alive and well, and I guess it's even more alive now. because what we have recognized is that quite a lot of our people, especially our Indo-Guyanese brothers and sisters, the young ones are venturing out somewhat, but the older folks, and especially in some of the regions where they dominate, they continue to push that race hate. And when you do that, you're never ever going to be able to address the issue, much more to bring a resolution to it. This batch of PPP hustlers, flatfoot hustlers, they believe that if you keep Black people down, you will always have the string there to pull them so, pull them so, pull them so. And then what they do very nicely is to camouflage their actions by throwing a Kwame, a Joe Hamilton, an Onage Waldron, and a Hugh Todd. So they say to you, you see, look, we're not racist. We're not depriving Afro-Guyanese. Look, we got Afro-Guyanese ministers, but deep down in their hearts, these Afro-Guyanese ministers don't mean zero to them, or they mean zero to them. Let's look at Mark Phillips as the prime minister. We know from back then, whenever the president is leaving the country, and I have to use these illustrations, whenever the president is leaving the country, the prime minister is sworn in. I can't remember, I stand corrected, but I can't remember at any time seeing Mark Phillips being sworn in as the president. It might have happened maybe once or so, but we are seeing everybody else acting as president. Mark Phillips can't go to an event and make any decision on the spot, and he's the prime minister. As a matter of fact, to make it even more real, at Parliament, you have an accommodation there for the prime minister. You know who occupies that?
The leader of the house.
The VP occupies that.
The
The
who?
prime minister has got to sit around like every other common parliamentarian. The VP occupies that spot when he comes there to Parliament. And so that
You said Barra Jagdeo occupies the prime minister's office.
Barra Jagdeo. And this is to show that we are dominating. That we are the dominant factor. And so we are not going to get anywhere close to bringing Africans to the table the way they ought to be there.
How do we get there? How can we make that happen? How do we as Afro-Guyanese and people who believe in equality push the whole country and society to where you're talking about?
Now, to do that, we have to start from the level of the school. And let me say to you, in the homes of many Indo-Guyanese, and I've had these kinds of experiences, at 3 years old, at 2 years old, they teach their children, you see that one, the man over there, the one Black man, no make he come next to you. He go harm you. The black man go do you this, he go do you that. And so when you instill that from those tender ages, then you know what is likely to happen by the time the child is 10 years old, 11 years old. How do we erase that? In our schools, we try there, the teachers try to ensure that there is equal integration and that we all sit together as one. And when we look at the way our children operate in school, this one pulling from that one bag and they're eating from the same bowl. I bite a piece of the icicle and I share it with you. I take out a piece of pickled mango and I share it with you. But then when they return to their homes, it's a totally different situation. Now, in order for us to be able to resolve this, we have got to be in control of the policies. We've got to be in control of the entire country to be able to change that. Because the fact David Hines would do that, Dr. Hines would do that. Ganesh, on the other hand, would try to do that. I am going to try to do that because my brothers went off there and they married Indo-Guyanese girls and we live as family. But how many more of us are able to do that?
When you say we have got to control the policy, what do you mean? Who's we?
All right.
A different set of people other than the
A
PPP
different
or
set of
Afro?
people. You're not
Okay.
going to have that with Barajagio. You're not going to have that with Gail Teixeira. You're not going to have that with people like Anand Prasad and them, because they are racist. They see themselves as being superior to blacks. You should sit in parliament and hear them talk to us. And so it is not something that can be changed tomorrow morning. But if we start doing the awarenesses from now, we are going to be able to capture the younger ones, especially those who are branching off and they're going to universities and they're mixing with others, and they're getting to understand that, yes, while our cultures are different, we are people, we are human beings. And then you find the intermarriages and so on happening. And even at that level, you find that if an Indo-Guyanese boy go off there to marry an Afro-Guyanese girl, the scorn that is there, you know? And so it is not an easy walk in the park, but if we start with a different set of people, we're going to be able to move to some other parts. But let me say this. In Guyana, if you look at Afro-Guyanese villages as compared to Indo-Guyanese villages, you're going to see the difference right away.
Yeah,
Right
development.
down the road, you see the differences. Let me come closer home. The Guyana Teachers Union has always been branded as an arm of the PNC. And our teachers have always been given a raw deal under the PPP. You know why? Because the majority of our teachers are Afro-Guyanese teachers. You just spoke about the Attorney General appealing a decision. We saw what happened in Linden when the nurses were on strike. Their salaries were cut. They went to court. The judge ruled that their money should never have been cut, and they should be given the refund. You know what the Attorney General did? He appealed that. And so the nurses are still waiting. The Guyana Teachers Union was on strike for 75 days just last year. After 4 years of pushing to this government, this racist elite government, to talk with us, 4 years, nothing. When the Guyana Teachers Union took industrial action, the PPP came after us by doing one. As soon as we indicated to them that we are going to go off on industrial action in February of last year, with immediate effect, they stopped the deduction of the Jews. They stopped the deduction and the remittance of the Jews. And you know what they're saying to us there? That's a black organization. We will cripple it. Because as long as you can't get the Jews, you can't do anything. That's one. Two, they decided to threaten the teachers by saying to them, we will cut your salaries for every day that you're out of school. And this was the very government who spoke highly of collective bargaining, and they always speak of democracy and so on. They started telling the teachers, we will cut your salaries. Thirdly, they went out there to those Indo-Guyanese teachers across the country, and they started pressuring them. We have a particular teacher, Martin Samaru from
Escribo, right.
He was there, vocal all the time. You know what they've done? They went after Martin. When they couldn't get to Martin, they took away some of the contracts he had, because he's a photographer, a professional photographer as well. They took away many of the contracts that he had there with the region. When they felt that that was not enough, they started going after his parents. You understand what we're playing here with? They weren't finished there. They started again with the GTU. We took them to court. We won that case. From April to now, another April, they have not yet reinstated the deduction of the Jews. And you know what they did? They took us to the appeals court. We won the case there, and they've not yet reinstated.
As a matter of fact, they attacked the judge. They attacked the judge for rewarding that.
Attacked Judge Kissoon, and then they attacked the appeals court judge. And so it seems as if you should not ever stand up against them. And I remember personally, Coretta McDonald came in for a whole slew of attacks. I am racist. Ask her, she spent all the GTU money. Ask her where she got money from to buy Lexus. This, that, the other. They till they couldn't see anything else. But you know what? Again, we have persons who are willing to join this fight of for ensuring that we live as one people. But the intimidation tactics that the PPP continue to use, teachers can't go on Facebook and like Coretta McDonald's posts when she put them up there, because the next thing you know, you're getting a call from one of the regional education officers, or you're getting a call from the chief education officer. You can't
Tyranny,
like and
tyranny.
comment on Coretta McDonald's post. And that's how petty they have become. And so they feel that by using, because they have the magic wand in their hands, they can swing it at any time, at anyone, and intimidate you. As a matter of fact, let me say to you, if we look at what happens in the education department, if you go there at many of the departments, you want to know if it's Little India you're in, if it's mini India, because they have sidelined many of our Afro-Guyanese education officers, and they swamp the place with Indo-Guyanese officers, whether they are qualified or not. The other thing they've done is to pull teachers out of school. Teachers who are their supporters, they pull them out of schools and second them to the Ministry of Education. We heard just now about free education from nursery to university, but you know what? Today I sat at a board meeting of the Guyana, the Government Technical Institute, and you know what? While they're jumping off and talking about, oh, we're giving free education and you don't have to pay fees, the students who have to write exams at GTI, they have to pay $2,500. And so they like to go out there and jump off with these big flares. But underneath the flare is a whole lot of hypocrisy. But
Ganesh,
let me
go ahead.
say, it can be done, but we have to be very strategic in how we do. And we have to have persons who are bold, persons who are fearless, persons who they can't say, well, I gave you that and I gave you that. Shut up, don't talk because I did give you so. We have to have persons who don't want. We have to have persons who understand the dilemma we're in, and then we'll be able to go forward. But it's going to
Ganesh,
take time.
structurally, do we live as a separate society, or do we work towards, as Curtis said, a government that probably would be more of a coalition type, more of a national front type, one that could promote national unity, one that recognize the importance of equal protection under law, equality, equal justice for everybody, at the same level, and we denounce supremacy, either supremacy or party paramountcy, whichever one. Or do we do like what happened in 1964 after the disturbances where everybody lived in separate communities? Do we formalize that arrangement and let the people go and live in Barbados and everybody else live in the rest of the country? We need to have this discussion. And I know they're going to say to raise it, but young people are talking about it. We're tired. We're tired fighting. Why is a fight with the police, a fight with the government, a fight? Why should we live? Why should we live like this? Why can't we live separately and live in peace? How do we achieve one people, one nation, one destiny, or we don't?
I believe, Rickford, that we need a government that must respect our institutions. And we must have a government that does not seek to politicize these institutions. Existing in the Guyana police force is too much politics. And the politics is there because the officers believe that if they do not adhere to these political masters, they can suffer by not getting promotion and by not benefiting for their own survival. So our country is currently in a state where the politicians are controlling the structures that were intended to ensure that we have one people, one nation, one destiny. And the politicians, in the sense of the People's Progressive Party, is using that to their advantage for control and domination. If we can have these structures independent of political interference to the point where the commissioner of police can become an individual that will pull in a minister like what Dharamlal was accused of and treat him the same way as how the police would treat an ordinary man on the street accused of the same, then we can achieve that objective of being one people, one nation, and one destiny. We have to ensure that we have a government that can respect the rule of law, that can return accountability and transparency, that can respect what is enshrined in the Constitution in terms of the freedom of expression, the freedom of association, the freedom to associate with any political organization or any union or any organization to represent your interests. Once we have those institutions insulated from political interference, then I think we can move in the direction of achieving one people, one nation, one destiny. But I want to come back to some of the points that were raised, and particularly when the Hamilton spoke about house lot allocations. There is something that people ought to understand too. In the Guyana context, Afro-Guyanese are more associated to the public service. So you will find them having a greater love for being a public servant or in the discipline services. So most of our firemen, our GDF officers, our police officers, our doctors, nurses, teachers, and so on, they find comfort in those working environments. But those working environments don't pay a sum of money that can categorize them as wealthy people. In fact, most of our people who are in those systems, even the Indo-Guyanese, Amerindians, and others, they live from paycheck to paycheck, basically. And when you look at the supporters of the People's Progressive Party, whom we categorize as friends, families, and favorites, they're mostly in the business community. And they are wealthy people who are encouraged by the People's Progressive Party to make money through awarding of contracts, through various different other business ventures, and so on. I say all of that to say to you that look at the awarding of house lots. When you apply for a house lot, they first screen you. And when they screen you, they categorize you as high income, middle income, and low income. And when they do that, they immediately begin the process of separation and creating that gap to put the poor one side from the rich. And I just outlined to you who are the real poor and who are the real rich. Now, when they finish doing that and they give you that letter to say that you have qualified for a low income, or you have qualified for a middle income, or you have qualified for a high income, at the time of awarding now, of course, the high incomes are in one section, the middle income in another section, and the low income in another section. When you look at the land of itself now, and the type of land, the quality of the land, whether it is a highland or a lowland, it's in swamp and those kind of things, the low income, which goes mainly to the public servants and so on, it's for still at the back of the scheme in the swampy area, smaller in size. The middle income is lesser to that extent, and the high income is far better. And the high income goes to the friends, the families, and the favorites who have the money in the country. And then when you look at how the people got to go and develop this land after getting it, the people with the low income, they got to spend more money than anybody else to get the land to a certain height. They have to invest in more in that small swampy piece of land that they got. The middle income could best very well face the same, but the high income get the best piece of land. And the high income people got the money that could have paid for the worst set of land, if you understand what I'm saying. So from the time they enter into that kind of realm of separating the people from the point of application to the point of developing the land, it is keeping the poorer people poor because they got to spend more to get their land to where they want it to get. So the poor people in this country will forever be spending more unless they change the system that we have. And the system can be changed by the very people understanding that they have the authority in their hands, that they have the power to make the change. This battle is not just singularly, and I understand the program is focusing on empowering Africans and the stupidity of Joe Hamilton at the UN and representing African interests and so on. But to shift the discourse now into understanding how we can have a government to give us what we rightfully want, and that is a Guyana where we are represented as one people, one nation, one destiny, where African people can feel comfortable with Indian people, Amerindians, and the others. We have to have a government that is prepared to do that. And the people in their right senses ought to understand that fighting amongst ourselves will not work. You see, I have witnessed, and this is being real, several people who are fed up with the People's Progressive Party and with Irfan Ali and the manner in which he is operating in this country. They want somebody who who they see as God-like, if I may use that terminology. And because they're so fed up with Irfan, they are looking for perfection in the other. But I am saying that we cannot compare Aubrey Norton to God. We have to compare him to Irfan Ali. And we have to recognize that Aubrey Norton is not corrupt, has never been associated with corruption, and has demonstrated his ability to stand up for not just African Guyanese. He did that for Indo-Guyanese also, and he did that for Amerindian Guyanese in the past. And we have to recognize that your leader is who you have to stand with that can guarantee you the safety that you're looking for.
I like the
And I
pitch.
see you
I like the
laughing,
pitch, Ganesh. I
Rickford,
like the pitch.
because I see you laughing, Rickford, but I'm serious on what I'm saying. The fight that is
I'm
happening
just laughing at how
amongst
I'm just laughing at how neatly you slipped in that pitch there for your leader. But go ahead.
No, but I'm serious. You asked the question of how we can do it. We can do it, but we got to stop fighting. And I'm saying we because I'm equally a part of the political opposition. And we have to realize that Aubrey got to be compared to Irfan. Aubrey is qualified, Irfan is a
When you
done.
say we gotta stop fighting, you mean the people of Guyana or the opposition?
The people who are against the People's Progressive Party and want to see a better Guyana. And the only alternative outside of the People's Progressive Party is the team that we have as the political opposition. And that is the experienced team to replace the incompetent People's Progressive Party.
All right, let me
That
come around the
includes
panel.
Dr. David Hines. It includes Coretta McDonald. It includes myself. And it includes
It includes
several other.
Rickford Burke too.
Thank you, Coretta. But the point I'm making, Rickford, is that when you compare Aubrey to Irfan, you know that Aubrey is the better choice. It's just a matter of accepting, rallying around, and moving in the direction of
All right.
unseating the
All right.
PPP. And if,
Okay. Point
no, no,
taken,
don't
guys.
cut me yet, don't cut me yet. And if that is
You
not
got 30
done,
seconds. Go ahead.
if that is not done, less than 30
Because
seconds, if
hold on,
that
hold
is
on.
not
Because
done,
Dr. Hines a political leader, you know. You can start pitching your own party just now. We
if
want
that
this
is
thing.
not done, listen to me. If that is not done, Rick Ford, then we can say another 5 years for the People's Progressive Party, and we will come back here next year and still talk the same thing like what we're talking right now. If we want
Okay.
to move forward positively, we got to do what is right.
All right, Dr. Hines. Not going down that rabbit hole, Ganesh, just let us come back to let us come back to the issue of the structure of our society. Many young people tell me, listen, I am so fed up. Even yesterday, a young person told me, I'm fed up, I want to leave Guyana. If these people go back in power, I'm leaving Guyana, and I'm telling you, all the young people will leave Guyana. Young black people will leave Guyana. Are we at a point where we should talk about having a separate society where the PPP can live by themselves and the rest of the country? Because they're inherently racist. There's no question about that. I don't care to bring James Bond, Jesus, whoever, to lie to us and tell us that their red thing is not good Kool-Aid, it's poison. So do we, how do we achieve one people, one nation, one destiny under the current situation where we have the PPP working to segregate us, working to ensure that ethnic supremacy informs government policy, and working to impose that supremacy on the rest of the society while they talk about diversity and equal rights and so on? It's just all talk. How do we separate as a society, or do we work harder? And in what context and under which conditions we can achieve one people, one nation, one destiny?
I'm glad for the question, Rickford, but in the context of us giving long speeches, I'm afraid that you have jumped over Sister Marcia, whose turn it was after.
I'm
No,
coming to
no,
her. I'm
no.
coming to her. So go ahead.
I'm learning. I'm listening, and I'm being
And
enlightened. Don't worry.
I don't know. I don't know if it was deliberate or you forgot it was Marcia's turn.
I'm leaving
I'm
the best for last.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. All right. So, with Marcia's permission, look, I think we have some real problems. Coretta raised the question of power. She didn't use the word power. She said we have to have new people. But she basically she says, look, if black people, African people, are going to deal with the structural problems that we have to have power. It's simple, pure and simple as that. The system that we have, the route to power under the system we have is through elections. It means, therefore, that whichever formulation African people by a majority supports or vote for has to be in power.
But wouldn't the other side argue that that will then engender reverse discrimination?
Well, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Right? I would prefer something, and that is why I'm saying that at a structural level we have to democratize power. And we have to move from a colorblind democracy to a color conscious democracy. What we have today is a colorblind democracy. All right? You go and you join a party, the party run and the party win without any attention to the fact that when one party wins, it means the race on the other side loses. So when the PPP wins, African people loses. When the PNC/coalition wins, Indian people loses. That kind of democracy is not going to get us anywhere. We have to move to a color conscious democracy, a democracy that guarantees each group in the society security, before and after an election. Sister Marcy is in Barbados. And in Barbados, there is a silent understanding that the white minority, they will control business, and that the black majority will control education and politics. Now, that social compact worked up to a certain point. But you now have reached the point in a place like Barbados where African Barbadians are saying, we have built up our educational and political stock, and we want to own business. We want to own part of the economy too. And so Barbados has to deal with its own dilemma of a colorblind compact to now move towards a color conscious compact to deal with the fact that Africans in Barbados are now educated, they're controlling politics, and they want now to be part of the economy. And we have reached that point in Guyana where African people are saying, we were once the entrepreneurs. The greatest entrepreneurial endeavor in the New World after emancipation was the village movement. There's nothing more entrepreneurial than that. It wasn't just buying land. It was buying land and transforming the lands into communities, into habitats, into places where people can nurture themselves. And having transformed them, you're talking about building churches and building schools next to them, about the village economy, about the governance system, the village councils, creating an entire system. And so therefore, Africans now in the post-colonial era are saying that the barriers to us getting back to that point where we were just after that has to do with the democratic system, or the so-called democratic economic and political system that we have, and something has to give. And we have to now move toward a color-conscious democracy. The democracy that we have cannot be fixed to deal with the question
How do we move towards a color-conscious democracy?
We have got to fight for it and break up this democracy that we have now. But the route to get there, you have to have power. And I'm saying one of the challenges.
Do we have to have power, or do we have to share power?
No. I'm saying, before you get to share power, you have to get power.
Yes,
right? And I'm saying one of the challenges of the coalition is that they first of all have to get power. But they have to get power with a consciousness that when they get power, they have to immediately move towards democratizing the basis of power. And one of my quarrels with the coalition, those of you who remember, was that I didn't think the coalition understood its historical role. All right? And I hope a new coalition government would understand its historical role. The PPP, for historic reason, will go along with the status quo. They will go along. We can't look to that party, right, to bring about the fundamental changes that you need in society. Unfortunately, the onus is on African people to lead the renaissance in Guyana. And so we have to have power under this decrepit system, but as soon as we got power, we have to start to transform that decrepit system into a democratic system that guarantees the security of all. There must be a way to govern for all while ensuring that each group is secure. Govern for all without discriminating against the individual groups. There must be a way to tear down the structural barriers to African liberation without hurting East Indians and hurting Amerindians. There must be a way to bring our Amerindian brothers and sisters out of the reservations into the light of life without discriminating against African and Indians. There must be a way to liberate the working class East Indians from under the yoke of a backward ideology that is grounded in caste and bring them into the light of a democracy in which their sisters and brothers of different color are seen as equal human beings and befitting of drinking tea together and eating food together. There must be a way to achieve that. And the way you achieve that is you move to a color conscious democracy. Look, if I have anything to do with education, I'm not throwing gold through the window. I'm keeping the scholarship and throwing the name through the window. But I'm going to look at goal
Mhm.
and I'm going to look at the data and I'm going to say the quota of scholarships for Africans is so much based on their needs. There's a quota for Amerindian based on their needs. There's a quota for
Yes.
East Indians based on their needs. And but I'm going further than that. The Africans who are given those scholarships, they're going to take those scholarships and learn Black history. They're going to go and learn African psychology. They're going there to get a master's degree in Black politics so that they can come back to Guyana and teach within the system their African children and the other children of Guyana about the Black reality. Those Amerindians, they are not going to study foolishness. They're going there to study the history of indigenous people and their patrimony in the new world so that they can come back and educate us about the Amerindian reality. The East Indians are not going to go to study how to make money and all that. People don't have to go to university to learn how to make money. They're going there to learn about the rich Indian culture so they can come back and teach our children and teach our people about the great Indian culture. When we do that, we are now going to be able to go to the United Nations next year and stand up there and say that gold scholarship that Camp Man was talking about last year, we have democratized it. And here are the results for African Guyanese.
Mm. Wow.
Marcia, last word.
Mm. Oh
Thanks,
my
Dr. Hines.
goodness. That was so powerful. I mean, this has been such a really enlightening show, and I'm hoping for those of you who are watching from the rest of the Caribbean that we understand the seriousness of what is happening in Guyana. We understand what is happening with our Afro Guyanese brothers and sisters, the same way that we empathize with Black Americans, understand what is happening there, and realizing that what we need a united Guyana. The Caribbean needs a united Guyana with all the resources that we have that's in Guyana. That all of our leaders, I know they're all looking to Guyana, some one way or the other. We will never be able to access it as a region if there is no unity, no coming together. As Dr. Hines talked about the East Indian, the African, the Afro Guyanese, everybody coming together, the Indo Guyanese and the Afro Guyanese coming together. In Barbados here, as was alluded to, we do have that kind of disparity happening, especially in business. And while it is more subtle, it is there. But I want the rest of you in the region to listen to what is happening, how explicit it is in Guyana. And we're talking about, I see on social media, because I watch this I read what's happening in Guyana from social media, and how the word racist is thrown about. But I want to say to Guyana, understand, those of you who are using the word racist, you're calling Rickford racist, and other people who speak out, you're calling them racist. But racism, really, unless there is, it has to do with power, it's not racism. You're talking about prejudice and power. And that's what Dr. Hines and everybody is talking about. It's power. And stop and ask yourself, in Guyana right now, who has the governmental power? I might say, I don't like you, I don't like the color of your skin, I don't like your hair, I don't like your eye, etc. That's prejudice. Racism is when there's prejudice and power. So who is really racist?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Financial power. Who has the financial power? Who has the legal power? See, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just about skin color, it's about power. It's history and justice. From the colonial divide between the enslaved Africans and the indentured Indians to today's political and economic favoritism. We hear about that word all the time. Honorable Coretta always talk to us about this favoritism. Afro-Guyanese communities continue to feel the weight of discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Land, jobs, contracts. We hear it all. We hear the stories here in Barbados. And cultural respect. These aren't just perks, these are rights. And I want you to listen. Those of you who come on the page just to create mayhem, listen. Listen to the other side.
They
We
can't
talk
listen.
about
They're
the right.
intellectually lazy, Marcia.
Yeah,
They're intellectually lazy.
land, jobs, contracts,
Most of them are fake
cultural.
profiles, Marcy, created to do
Exactly. They're
exactly what they're
and
doing.
it
The
is
government
managed
has
out of a
created a set
government
of fake
ministry.
profiles.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm seeing somebody called Jessica something attacking you, saying you're on a panel with pro racist, so you're racist. That is a
But that's a
profile
lot.
coming up
Yeah.
from the government Ministry of Information, the Prime
Wow.
Minister's office, headed by Kwame McCoy, the Minister of Education, who's a slave catcher.
No, but that's a wrong understanding. That's a wrong understanding. I wish that
But they don't care.
that viewer would take the moment, take the time and listen. And just listen. What's happening is that we're not all starting at the same starting block. We're not. And so you've got to listen. When power is unevenly distributed, so is opportunity. The truth, Afro Guyanese are too often sidelined. Listen, policed harder. We saw the video. When one community, the police is chased out. In the other community, they fire live bullets at
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're given fewer chances to thrive in their own country. This conversation tonight is not about division. What we want is equity.
Exactly.
It's time that we need to face these truths head on, Guyana. We need the rest of the region. We need you. We need you. We need you to be united. Guyana is so rich. We make jokes about it all the time, you know. And but we need you to work together. We need you, Guyana. Let's please listen. Listen. Listen to each other.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcia. And thanks to everybody. Coretta MacDonald, Member of Parliament, Ganesh Mahipal, Member of Parliament, Dr. David Hines, host of Politics 101 and Professor of African American Studies at the University of Arizona.
Arizona State,
Um, uh,
Arizona State University.
Arizona State University. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm mixing
yes,
it up.
yes. So
Sorry.
Arizona is the other one.
It's tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, right? No,
Yes,
tomorrow is
only
is
Thursday.
Thursday.
yeah.
Holy
Tomorrow's
Thursday.
Thursday.
Holy
Today.
Thursday too.
Today is Thursday, and Bart Jagner is going to come and curse all of us out and call us racist.
Mhm.
They do not deal with the issues that we're talking about: the issue of racism, the issue of discrimination, the issue of prejudice, the issue of um, no justice for people of African descent. And equal rights and justice, unless a society has equal rights and justice, is not a just society, it's not a democratic society. And throwing around words about racism doesn't bother me because I am not expressing hate for anybody. I'm not demonstrating prejudice for anybody. I'm not discriminating against anybody. I'm not using government policies to implement my prejudice. I am calling out discrimination. We are here calling out prejudice. We are here calling out the inequities in society, and we're calling for change. And if Bart Jack Day, when Anal Nanal and Earth Nally can't address that and come with solutions
How they do
rather
it?
than acrimony and imminent attacks, that's racist. And that's perpetuating your hatred and bias and prejudices. So for the PPP supporters coming on here to say that we are racist, we understand that you guys are somewhat intellectually slow and maybe you're not getting the concept. But this discussion is not about racism or we are not expressing hate for anybody. The other thing they do is they associate criticism of the PPP with criticism of East Indian people, which tells you in itself who they are. Because when you look at some of the trolls, right, they're like, oh, so why you're talking about Indian people? Oh, you guys are there condemning Indian people because they see the PPP as Indian people.
As Indian.
And therein is the problem. Therein is the problem. Because if we want to criticize the PNC, we don't say black people. The PNC. They're separated things. But the PPP see themselves as Indian people.
As
And
Indian.
that's why they say when you criticize the PPP, you criticize East Indian people. We've had a very good discussion tonight. Wow. It is 12 o'clock. We gone. I'm sorry to keep you guys so late. We still have 22,000 people watching. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have another conversation, another edition of Conversation with Rickford Burke on Sunday evening when Nigel Hughes will be my guest. Have a good night, everybody. Have a
Yes,
good
good
morning,
night.
everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you very much,
Rickford.
and good night to
Thank
all your
you.
Thanks,
viewers.
panelists.
Night, night.